Hello, Mr. Suleiman. Let's talk a little bit about your fantastic film, It Must Be Heaven. This is a film which takes a little bit apart. It's not about Palestinian, and it is at the beginning, of course, but then there is a departure of that, and you, in certain ways, something that you have taste or have a taste in Cuba, you put your way to understand cinema, the world, how it works, the daily life, in two different contexts, which is Paris on one hand, and on the other hand, New York. How do you find the way to your, I wouldn't say your system, but it's a certain way there is a poetics, and I would call a poetics of absurd, because what you do usually is to observe how the things are, and you find a hole in the functioning of the whole world. How do you think about that?
That was not a question, that was more like a
An
thesis.
affirmation, a thesis, yes. But do you agree with that?
You know, I think the way I work is to always find an aesthetic that does not leave an equation of agreeing and disagreeing. I think that that an interpretation is one way of seeing, so it's difficult to come and say, you know, this is not why or this is how. But the film, I mean, I have to say also, to even emphasize a little bit, I think that on my part, I start to see more and more, and I think this is going to crystallize, you know, more and more, what it is that the film is trying to actually say or hint to. So the fact is, I'm also in the same position like quite a few spectators. Somehow, by projecting the film after it was done, I'm also progressively trying to understand what it is I have done. So there are a few things that I already knew why, and there are a few things that I'm discovering along the way, you know, by a couple of sitting in a couple of projections. But I think one thing that I seem to now be sure of is that I think at the base of it there is this absolute want and desire to compose an image that has essentially a purpose of pleasure, of giving pleasure. And that is the base of the raison d'être of this image. After which it can, you know, start to flare into infinite directions and float into some kind of cosmos and become a crystal ball and a fireball and in certain cases also maybe an unsignified kind of territory for just also the present pleasure that the spectator can take. But whether it has interpretations, political significances, of course it does. I mean, the idea is quite evident in the image. There is something that is being talked about. But I hope that this, for the spectator, is by consequence. That is, first they enjoy the composition, first there's some desires that might be triggered in them, and then secondly, maybe after they've watched the film, to start to diagnose and fragment, deconstruct the image into its different meanings. And evidently, I think we're talking about, you know, the global situation in this film.
Yes, it is a film that, as usual, you always talk about the Palestinian situation, but it's here that, as I said at the beginning, there is a departure, and departure you arrive to Europe first and then to North America, the two most, I would say, one of the two most powerful cities. But the method is the same. You observe, you find a territory, you just observe the daily life, and you see how the political, in certain ways, are imbued in those daily small rituals. My impression is that you work through showing the rituals in repetition, and in certain moments you find something which is not working properly. That's the method, do you think?
It's not necessarily consistently that. I think it's one way to look at it. Maybe I haven't looked at it that way myself. I think that repetition in certain of the cases has the purpose of arriving to a punchline. So this kind of rhythmical temporality is to arrive to a kind of it's like the beating of the drum, it looks like it's the same, but in fact it's progressing somewhere, it's going somewhere. And also because punchlines, certain gags, certain burlesque situations need first to familiarize you and establish a kind of tension of some sort before it actually reveals the moment of, between quotes, the moment of truth. And so for the gag to work, there has to be a very precise time. And so there is this repetition, this like 1, 2, and then the third. So it's a question of rhythm and temporality, actually. So, but it's not always apparent in my work that there is the repetition. I mean, I think in this film there are a few places as such. I'm trying to remember, because in Paris there's a couple of places like that.
Yeah. But also you do it, for instance, it's interesting how you introduce some of the moments which it could be like, has been thought like something a little bit controversial. For me it's not at all, which is the moment that in the street you show the people chicken or...
you mean the ambulance?
Yes, but before that there is a moment that you are in a plane. So you are preparing everything. Like if you see like the whole film as a whole, you see how certain parts prepare for some other parts which is coming.
Of course. For example, the perverse, my perverse character in the street looking at the beautiful girls.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
And then you put the lady who is cleaning the place that all those clothes are sold. So there is always a kind of play, dialectical play, sooner or later something else will come to rephrase what you have seen through the images.
Yes. Well, also it's like what, first of all, you in this particular also segment, there's something about the illusion of what Paris, is in his mind, basically. So, and then, again, by the way, it's like the bare Paris, the Paris that's underneath. For this reason, I created the pretext of the 14th of July, and like there's nobody in the street, in order to show, the homeless, the femme de ménage, the woman who cleans the fashion house, the police chasing Arabs. And this is the reality that I wanted to show, that is beneath the reality of the exotic, or exoticized, or Paris. So I prepare the audience for this by giving them first, the illusion, and then by giving them the surprise of the bare Paris. So this it's basically some sort of a. Again, it has to do something with the punchline. It's a bit of a preparing the gag, actually, to present also the political content of the film, of the rhythm of the film. Yes, but I use this strategy a lot to create an element of surprise, and also sometimes not only surprise, but many times also to prepare you for something that has some sort of poetic ground, you know. So you need to go there, and I prepare a kind of path where you are heading, you know, towards this kind of poetic side.